Hello, I'm Rabbi Mark Gelman.
Now, Father Tom Hartman. We're the God Squad.
We are. And Tommy, as we continue this very, very important series for us, our Muslim neighbors, we come to one of the most basic links between all religions, and that is that religions give us a way to consecrate, to celebrate the cycle of life.
And today we're going to get a chance to look at three parts of life: birth,
Getting a driver's license,
marriage,
and when you get your first utility bill. These are
and death.
And death. Birth, marriage, and death. And what's wonderful about the way religion helps people, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, all the great religions of the world, is that they link individual families to ancient traditions, and they give us really a sense that our lives are not just about us, but that they are about larger issues and larger forces and larger traditions that our lives are meant to preserve and protect.
Our first segment will focus on a child's birth and the Muslim traditions and customs associated with that birth. Joining us for this discussion are Obaid and Yaqoot Khan, parents of two children, including their son, Zain, who is with us. Welcome.
Welcome, Obaid.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Zain, it's so good to see you. Hi. Oh, what a great smile.
Now, it's my understanding that in the Muslim faith, before a child is born, parents whisper something in their ear?
No, when a child is born.
Well, you can't, otherwise it would be awkward.
Yeah.
Oh,
You can't really whisper into a fetus's ear. It's really that.
Well, my sister used to read to her baby
I know.
in the womb.
Mara used to play Bob Dylan music for Zeke, and it's really worked because he won't listen to Bob Dylan music. No, it's a wonderful
when
custom.
their birth.
After they're
when,
born.
when they're born, by tradition, the first sound that the baby's supposed to hear is the call to prayer, the azan.
Oh.
So, for his birth,
Allahu Akbar.
Allah Akbar, yes.
Yeah.
When he was born, after obviously the doctor took him out and made sure everything was okay, they handed him to me, and I whispered in each ear the call to.
Oh, that's
the call
such
to
a
prayer.
beautiful custom.
Yeah, it was very nice.
That's a wonderful custom.
Now, would that be because the hope that he would hear God throughout his life?
Yes, it's also to understand where he's from and to give thanks that all things are because of God, and we're very appreciative that such a great blessing has been bestowed upon us, and not only for us acknowledging that we have him because of God, but he also understands that he's here because of God.
Absolutely. Yaqoot, there's another custom that we'd love to know more about that's unique to Islam, and that is the Aqiqah ceremony. Tell us about that.
That is traditionally what is done is after the birth of the baby, anywhere up to 3 months actually, you should get the head shaved off, and
Probably just the hair, yeah. That would be a wiser move. That's
the hair shaved
I
off.
know what
that way,
you meant.
that way there's something left.
You
That way
don't
there's something
have to
left.
make so much of this.
I understand.
No more arrogance.
I'm
now.
in a bad mood.
The hair shaved off, and what used to be done was that they used to give the weight of the hair was given off as charity, whatever the hair weighed. In proportion to that, the amount was given in charity.
Cool.
Yes,
So it's
very-
good to have a very hairy, heavy-haired,
Which he
heavy
did.
Yes.
Yes.
So charity, zakat, right? Isn't that they benefited
Yes.
from that? That's wonderful. Tell
Yeah,
us.
so you also have a 5-year-old daughter,
We do have a 5-year-old daughter.
and she's
Yes.
gone to school now?
She actually goes to Sunday school, the Long Island Islamic Center School. She goes there every Sunday. She looks very forward to it. Every weekend. That's something she wants to go there. Her cousins are all there. She has friends there. It's very nice. She's
Have you
running.
noticed a difference in her since she's been going to school?
Definitely, she's picked up a lot of good things. She's learning how to pray. She knows a couple of small prayers. She says Bismillah before she starts eating, which is just like saying, in the name of God.
Yes.
Yeah, just like saying grace.
In terms of celebrations, I think the key for us is we use the Aqiqah ceremony after that, where we actually got his hair shaved.
And you weigh it out? Is that?
No, we didn't
Well, we
actually
didn't do that. I
weigh
mean,
it
that's
out,
traditional
but
custom.
yeah.
we're
What we did is
supposed
They just sent it $20,000.
we actually, I mean, we didn't make it very formally. My younger brother, when he had his son, they actually had somebody come over to the house and shave his son's hair in front of everybody. But what we did is we just went to the local barber shop. We did it. It was kind of funny because he was a Russian gentleman, and he actually said that they had a similar custom where he was
Yes,
from.
we do.
So we then, but then when we came home, we had a nice celebration. We invited the family over, and it was more of a feast with food and.
And when is that done again? About when is the
We're up to
Akika?
3
Is there a
months.
3 months? No set time.
No
set
set
time.
time.
But that's, you know what's so wonderful about that ceremony, as in your baptism or our naming ceremonies, our bris, we call it, and that is, when you grow up, you realize someone did this for me before I wanted it done, before I decided it, which means that there was a community, an ummah, the community of Muslims that did this for me, and my parents were part of that, and therefore I'm part of this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you said it earlier. I think at the very beginning you said that you're part of a larger world, and there's a larger traditions that you need to pass on. And us growing up, you start appreciating that, and you start understanding that you have to pass these things on to your kids, and hopefully when he's older, he understands what values he was kind of raised in, and he can pass that on.
You grew up as Muslims.
Yes.
What do you think his world would be like as a Muslim?
Well, actually, I'd like to believe it'll be easier, because when I grew up, my parents were first generation, so when they came here, a lot of the structure and the settings that are in place today, they weren't in place back then.
Right. But it was the same for my folks who were children of immigrants from Russia.
Right.
It's just an immigrant experience, and as you...
It's better. It's better.
As you
It's better.
acculturate, I don't like the word assimilate into America, because that means you give up what you were.
Absolutely
It's
not.
I integrate into America is what I would say.
Well, it's fun, preparing for the show. I remember when I was my daughter's age or a little bit older, there was no Sunday school. There was no mosque to go to.
That's
and I
right.
remember
These are all American
my parents
institutions.
having to deal with, when we had a religious holiday, when we had a special event, for them to they were my Sunday school teachers. They were, we gathered, when we first came here, we gathered in somebody's house to celebrate Eid. But now my daughter, she goes to Sunday school. It's hopefully it's better. It's easier.
The feast.
The feast or Sunday school or anything, it's
One thing I want
better.
to ask about baby rituals is naming. We have a tradition as European Jews, which is not what Sephardic Jews in the Muslim world, had. The Ashkenazi European Jewish tradition is you never name a baby after someone who's alive.
Right.
The Sephardic Jewish tradition is you always name, almost always, you name the baby after a living person, but never the father, always an uncle or something, usually an uncle or a grandpa, if it's a boy, or a grandma or an aunt. Do you have those traditions about naming?
No, we can actually name either after somebody who's alive or after somebody who's passed away.
Are there
is no-
cultural differences in that, or are there customs of how you pick a name?
Not really.
No.
Try not to pick the name that somebody else has. That's
Yeah, well, there's a
when you
lot.
have a large family, you
There's
try
a
not
lot
to
of
pick the same
Mohammeds
thing.
around. There's a lot of Moshes around in our tradition.
Actually, in our family, it's kind of unique that we come from such a large family. You try not to get the exact same name as somebody else.
That's true. That's true.
We
But you
usually
probably
look
will.
for saints.
That's right.
You
Oh, we
usually
have,
look for people
prophets' names. We
Yeah.
pick prophets' names.
Uh-huh.
Like Zain is the name of the Prophet's grandson, Prophet Muhammad's grandson, so that's how we picked it.
We'd like to thank Obi and Yaqoot for joining us to talk about the early years in the life of a Muslim. When we come back, we'll learn about the next phase in a Muslim's life, adulthood and marriage. So please stay with us on Our Muslim Neighbors. Welcome back. Today we're discussing the life cycle of a Muslim. We've heard about growing up in a Muslim tradition and family and the customs that follow.
Now we'd like to turn our attention to the next phase of every person's life, and this is the second rite of passage. This is marriage. And joining us for this segment are newlyweds, Iman Habib and Ahmed Mahmoud. Ahmed, welcome.
Thank you.
Iman,
Now, I have
welcome.
a question.
And as we say in Arabic, mazel tov. Congratulations on your marriage. When were you married?
October 20.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you're old married couple now.
But we weren't living together.
I have a question before we get to the marriage. We just heard the word iman as opposed to imam. Does that apply to a woman?
Iman is traditionally a female's name, even though males can be given that name. It means faith. Imam is the leader of the mosque.
Right. But let's first talk about an issue which is in all of our traditions. It's in Judaism, it's in Christianity, and various cultures. And that is arranged marriages. We all have them. As people grow in America, it's less and less and less. But in traditional cultures that we all came from, most people were fixed up, arranged. Tell us about your situation. Yours was sort of an introduction, sort of arranged, but not quite. How did you meet?
Yeah, it was sort of introduction, and then we had to spend some time to go out and know each other better, and then both of us decided whether
Yeah, that's
it's
the
good
key
for-
thing. You decided to get married.
yeah.
So really, yours was not in any way an arranged marriage. It was just an introduction, which is how most people I married, Tom, that's how they met.
Somebody introduced
Yeah.
them.
Someone who wouldn't let you live your life. who wouldn't let you live your life the way it was, said, you know, I have someone.
Yeah, he said, join the club.
Right, and so they said, you said, leave me alone, you probably said, and then they said, no, we're not going to leave you alone. This is a terrific person. Is there a particular Muslim engagement? Is that a religious status, and how does that work?
Well, we did have an engagement. That was in May.
What's it called?
It was a khutuba.
And we call our marriage document a ketubah. It's the same.
And we did have Qira'at al-Fatiha before that. It's before engagement.
Yes?
People read the first surah in Quran. It's like a commitment.
Is it a party or a...
It was like a
Ceremony?
get-together, family get-together, so that...
And that's the
family.
formal that you will be
Yeah.
married.
It's sort of not that we'll be married. It's sort of like the equivalent of we're dating. But even though we're not dating, it's just like we're getting to know each other as a person.
Really?
Under
That's
the
very
knowledge of the
interesting.
whole
And
family.
under my parents' knowledge. It's not like I'm sneaking behind their
Oh,
backs.
how very
you know,
nice. I
going out
like
with
that
them or
very
anything.
much. Because you know why? Most of the guys that my daughter dated never would have passed that ceremony. I never would have let them in the house. So what happens if the families object? Then you wouldn't have that.
I don't think we would have gotten married if our
Uh-huh.
families were so...
That's good. That's good to have that regard. Is there a dowry in the old days? You know, you used to, if you wanted to get married, you had to give a dowry to marry. You had to give
Yeah.
the wife's family compensation for taking away someone who would help in the house. Is there dowry still?
The dowry is for the wife, not for the family.
For the wife,
it's
right.
hers. She own it. She do whatever she want with it.
Got it. And does that come at the engagement or the marriage?
It come up as on the engagement.
Uh-huh.
And it's called mahr, M-A-H-R.
Right. We call it mohar.
Yeah, mahr.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Mohar.
Mohar, same word,
Yeah.
same word, same idea. These are very advanced ideas because what they did is they assured women who often in cultures didn't have any rights. And one of the great scandals against women in Orthodox Judaism or in Islam is that they don't have rights. This is wrong. That's totally wrong. The Mohar, for example, gives women some property that they wouldn't have otherwise and rights that they wouldn't have otherwise.
And
Now,
it's sort of a gift. It's not like alternative for marrying the woman. It's a gift for her, so it shows a love.
right.
It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be small. It just reflects your love to.
Then there's the marriage. Now tell us how the ceremony goes at the marriage. What do you do?
We invited some of our friends and family to the mosque, and it was around Zohr time, afternoon time, about 1 o'clock.
Is there a day that you normally get married most? Or a day you can't? Can
Usually,
you get married on Friday afternoon during the...
you can marry any time, any day.
Oh,
But
okay.
in our country, usually people get married on Thursday night,
Which is your country?
Egypt.
In Egypt.
Yeah.
Thursday night.
Because Friday's a day off, you know,
Yeah,
Friday
right.
praise and everything.
Now,
else is
would you
convenient.
be asked to refrain from getting married during Ramadan?
Ramadan, even though you can get married, it's not desirable to get married on Ramadan because that's the month people fast and
Sure. You couldn't have much of a party.
Yeah.
Well, of course, after
it's
dark.
preferred to get married after Ramadan.
We'd like to thank Iman and Ahmed for joining us today to talk about their marriage and how important it is for them as Muslims. When we come back, we'll learn about the golden years in the Muslim's life. So please stay with us on Our Muslim Neighbors. Welcome back to Our Muslim Neighbors. Joining us for our final segment on the life cycle of a Muslim is our good friend and the person who most helped us put together the series, the president of the Islamic Center of Long Island, Dr. Faroque Khan.
Welcome, Farouk. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Mark.
You've recently lost your dad. What does a Muslim family do to prepare the person for death?
When we hear about a death, we say Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun, which means we come from him and we go to him.
You know, we say, Baruch Dayan Emet, may praise be the righteous judge. What do you say when you hear of a death?
We basically say prayers over the person, but we have the same understanding that we've come from God and we return to God.
Having said that, after that, we make plans for burial as soon as convenient and possible. And then in the Muslim tradition all over the world, we bury the dead. And
would that be right away or a day or two?
It's as soon as one can do it. Sometimes there's a question of travel, families are coming, you may hold it for a day or so, but the sooner the better.
Now, Mark, is it true in Judaism that Jews feel as though the Spirit of God has left the person and that they have to be put back into the ground to be in touch with that Spirit of God?
Well, the corpse is a holy thing. It's the vessel of the soul, and because we come from dust and we return to dust, for that very same reason, Jews and Muslims bury the dead in the ground. But we don't have what you have, which is the wake.
We have a 2 or 3 day wake, and then we would have a mass or a service if it was Protestant, and then the person would be buried.
Yes, I've gone to a whole bunch of them here, but we don't have those traditions. Of course, there is period of mourning. People come to the family and, grieve for a couple of days after that.
Do you have prayers at the house?
We have prayer services at the house. We have prayer services in the mosque. Prayer services conducted regularly. But the burial is done the sooner the better. And after that, there's a period of mourning. And then life goes on.
See, interestingly, I know I've gone to Shiva, sit Shiva with you. In Christianity, the focus is not the home. The focus is the church. The person is being brought back to God, and then when they go to the cemetery, a priest would go or a minister would go to bless the land. so that the person is returning to Holy Land.
Right. Islam and Judaism are very much the same. For us, the focus is the home.
At the time of the burial, for example, the group will gather around the grave, and there's something about that closure. You put the casket in, you put the dirt over it, and then you say some prayers and ask people to pray for the soul. May the Lord forgive the person's mistakes and errors, and give.
Do you have Muslim cemeteries where you're supposed to be buried in consecrated ground in a Muslim cemetery?
In Long Island, yes. We have now purchased a large plot in Suffolk County, and it's filling up very quickly. The community is growing so rapidly. Yes, there are separate areas for different communities.
Is it
Yes.
legal or okay for you to be cremated if you're a Muslim?
It's not permitted in Islam.
Neither in Judaism.
For a long time, we didn't allow it. But in England, they ran out of space. So they applied to Rome, and Rome said, okay, you can get cremated, but you have to believe that there is a God and that you're returning to that God, so that the act of cremation is not a statement against God.
No, Tom, in our tradition, the question doesn't even come up.
Right, we
Question of
don't do it.
cremation.
We don't do it. What about the conflicts that we all face now of the end of life, of all of this technology that can extend a person's breathing, but they aren't really extending their life? How does Islam face
A
this?
very relevant question, and I've done some work in this field, end-of-life issues. We have so much technology, we can keep a person going on and on and on. And the question of death comes up. What is death? Separation of soul and body.
Yes.
How do I define that at the bedside of a patient? Where is the soul? Is it up here? Is it over here? And these are questions which are being debated now. I have written some stuff about it. And we feel that if the brain is gone completely, if the person has lost the upper brain as well as the lower brain, then that is death. And
So,
you can
same with
terminate,
us.
you
Same
can
with us.
terminate all the life support and take it out.
And how about organ donations?
There is debate about it. I personally feel it's perfectly appropriate. If you can save another person's life.
Me
you
too.
can give
I
that
agree
up.
with you.
But there is some differences on that. You don't want to desecrate the body and so on. Personally, I would say it's okay to donate your corneas and so on after the death, because others are benefiting. The community is benefiting.
We,
Sure.
by the way, would share that same philosophy. We would encourage people to donate organs because it is a way of healing somebody.
Do you celebrate, memorialize the anniversary of a person's death in Islam?
Usually what happens in my family, for example, at the annual anniversary, we just celebrated my brother's death about a year ago, and we bring the family together, we remember him, and we usually recite from the Quran and ask for supplications and forgiveness for his soul. And
Do you visit the grave there?
oh yes, regularly. Whenever I visit, it's in fact recommended for a Muslim to visit the gravesite, offer the prayers, and remember everyone will end up there, and think of the future.
We have prayers in our tradition where we pray for all those who have died. They're prayers for if you have your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, your son, your daughter, or your spouse who have died. You are a mourner, technically a mourner. You must come and say prayers 4 times a year at different holidays. Do you have that?
We don't have fixed times, but it's recommended from the Prophet's traditions and other teachings in our religion that one should visit the grave, say prayers for the departed, and be reminded of what life is all about in that process.
In our tradition, when a person dies, we believe that they then go to God. We use the terms heaven, hell, and purgatory. What would your tradition say?
The Quran says the death is the separation of body and soul. And then there's a barzakh, there's a suspension, there's a partition till the day of judgment when they will be resurrected. So it's pretty much similar.
Yes.
And then there'll be day of accounting, and we are all hoping that we'll be on the right side towards heaven and not towards the left side, which is...
Which brings up a very wonderful topic. A year ago, we got together to talk about doing these shows. We've now completed 10 shows.
Wow.
What has been the reaction in your community?
It's been the high point of my year,
Really?
actually.
Oh.
Just to see you folks put the face of the Muslims on television and show the real people, and not be carried away with the images which we are inundated with of a few extremists.
Right.
So we're delighted, and actually we're honored to be part of this this exercise.
Well, you know, it's been such a blessing for us, and Tom and I remark when we speak and when we're just together how our friendship would have been impossible 30 years ago because of church attitudes and of the attitudes of Jews. We couldn't have been allowed to be best friends. But now things are different. And what we most hope and what we pray is that in another, hopefully not 30 years, but much less, that we will all be able to have strong and deep and powerful friendships which will build the core of understanding and tolerance that will expand out from here and really change
Mark, what
everything.
amazes me is I have watched these 10 shows closely, is the similarities which come out.
Yes.
At the end of the show, gee, they all said the same thing.
Yes, we do that. We call it, right, we call it this, you call it that, but
It's pretty much the same place
Yeah.
we're all going.
Faroque, I wanted to meet people of other faiths, and I was encouraged not to, because my local priest was afraid that I would convert. When I met you, it became reality. You were a fulfillment of one of my dreams, and it has been better than I ever thought it would be. Our friendship means the world to me. And I then met you, and I so admire you, and said, why can't we do the same with the Muslim community? And that was the dream that came from me since I was a child. And we want to thank you for being so supportive of this religious getting to know each other, praying together, talking with each other. I'm Father Tom Hartman.
And I'm Rabbi Mark Gelman.
We're the God Squad. God bless you.